What if some of the biggest obstacles to discernment aren't obvious mistakes, but habits that we've come to accept as normal? Today, we're exploring four more awareness zappers that can quietly influence our decisions and make it harder to recognize what genuinely serves us. And the more purpose-driven your work is, the more important it becomes to notice them. In the last video, we discussed lack of attention, lack of self-connection, and self-doubt. Today, we'll continue with four more. First is expectations. Now, expectations can act like tinted glasses. Instead of seeing what's actually happening, we begin interpreting everything through the lens of what we think should happen or what we're accustomed to experience happening. And when our expectations become rigid, they limit our ability to recognize possibilities that we didn't anticipate. We can become so focused on one imagined outcome that we miss important information pointing us in a different direction. Now, the second zapper here is attachment. And attachment narrows our perspective because we become invested in a particular outcome. When we're attached to one specific result, we often overlook alternatives that may actually serve us better. So the more attached we become, the harder it can be to accurately assess what's unfolding. Instead of responding to reality as it is, we may find ourselves trying to force circumstances to match our preferred outcome. So I invite you to consider if you can recall having that kind of experience where your attachment really limited you there. I know that I certainly have experienced it with things with like a forced change to a computer program that I was really attached to the one I'd been working with, and I was determined that I still wanted to try to make it work when it actually wasn't going to work, and I was literally keeping in such a fixed point of view that it took me a while to recognize that there were actually other better options out there that served me much better than fighting to keep something that there were actually better alternatives to. So perhaps you can think of an example in your own life or consider what role it might even be playing out for you in this moment. So going on to the third awareness the open-minded awareness zapper here, and that is conformity. And while, right, healers, visionaries, creatives, we tend not to see ourselves as conformist. However, there are still certain norms, ideas, societal expectations, social cues, and so forth that prompt a certain level of conformity. And that conformity encourages us to fit in rather than to think for ourselves. So that can be especially challenging for healers, creatives, visionaries, because the ideas, the gifts, the contributions that we're here to bring forward often won't look exactly like what everyone else is doing. And when we automatically follow the crowd, we risk overlooking guidance that points us in a different direction. And sometimes the very path that would allow us to make our greatest contribution is the one that asks us to step beyond familiar expectations. So I invite you to consider if some degree of conformity may be holding you back right now. And the fourth awareness zapper that we'll discuss today is rigidity. And rigidity limits our ability to adapt when new information becomes available. When we become fixed in our beliefs, plans, assumptions, our ways of doing things, we can unintentionally close ourselves off to valuable insights and opportunities. Now, life is constantly expanding and constantly presenting us with new information. Discernment requires the willingness to consider that what made sense yesterday may not be the best fit today. Rigidity can cause us to hold tightly to old conclusions, even when evidence suggests another approach may serve us better. Open-minded awareness, on the other hand, allows us to remain grounded while still being receptive to growth, to learning, and new possibilities. So as you reflect on today's conversation, I invite you to ask yourself, which of these awareness zappers seems to affect me most often? If you'd like to continue exploring these ideas with a supportive community of purpose-focused people, I'd love to invite you to join our free Facebook group. You'll find the link below. And there we'll continue this conversation, share additional insights, and support each other in strengthening these essential abilities for living and serving from our deepest purpose. And in our next and final video in this series, we'll shift our focus from what weakens awareness to what strengthens it. So you can intentionally develop the open-minded awareness that supports wise decisions, authentic living, and greater impact in the world. And in the meantime, I want to thank you so much for being here and for being you. Namaste and many blessings to you, my friend.